I guess my name is Ben, your host, and today we have a dear friend of mine, Mr. Chris, the CEO and founder and main brain behind Go MetaRail. What's going on, Chris? How you doing?
Yeah, doing good. How are you doing, Ben?
I'm doing fantastic. Been looking forward to this episode for a long, long time. Full disclosure, we do know each other pretty well. I'm an advisor to Go MetaRail, so a little biased, and I absolutely love everything that we're working on together. Got big things planned for the future, but really wanted to take this time to bring you onto the show and share with the world your story and who you are, what you're building, what we're building together, and why it's so critically important for the metaverse and the future of crypto and the blockchain and crypto gaming, and just the whole wide world. So, yeah, let's kick it off. Would love to hear your story of how you got to this point.
Yeah, so I've been in the software engineering world for about 16 years now. Worked at some cool places like Apple and ZipRecruiter, Pfizer, and so some like larger companies, but then also some cool startups where I learned a lot about building high performing teams and kind of what it takes to get companies off the ground and successful. So um, got really into crypto and eventually NFTs over the past few years. And then now the metaverse is a thing, and we discovered. I was kind of disappointed, to be honest, to discover that the metaverse currently is lots and lots of little projects. Each project is awesome, and like I'm super excited about this space, but the metaverse is actually not a thing. It's not connected. It needs to be connected. That's what people want. That's what people need. That's what Ready Player One promised us, and that's what we're doing now. So we're on a mission to connect the metaverse at a technical level. We know how to do it. We're ready to roll, and our network's expanding. Every week.
Yeah, it's amazing, and that's really been one of the most incredible parts that I've observed in the promise of the metaverse is the linkage of the worlds together and having a seamless experience of going from one to the other without feeling like you're without being interrupted by the logistics of moving from one to the other. And
Right.
and that's a really inspiring vision. I want to jump more into the metaverse, of course. That's what we're here for. But first, let's dig a little bit more into your background. So, you're software engineer by trade. What first inspired you to go into that field? And I mean, why did you decide to go down that career path?
Well, I've always been interested in computers. I learned my first programming language when I was 8 years old. Learned C and then C++, but we didn't have a family computer at that time, so I did it with pencil and paper and debugged the code myself, just and graded it that way. And that gave me a really deep understanding of how compilers work, how processors work, and I've always been really fascinated with that. So the internet was becoming a thing that everyone could access as I was growing up. And so then I started getting involved in different projects, different games, um, different open source projects going on. And from there, learned how hard it is to make a game. I have a lot of respect for game developers. And then I started getting into web development itself, moving from software to web development, and realized that that's going to be a huge part of the future. And I guess that's in the past now, but it really took off. And from there, I've been in the web world ever since. And so it's been kind of cool to see software today basically is on the web. So it kind of has gone full circle, and now web development is software development. So it's been kind of neat to go on that ride.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Seems like you've really come a long way from the pencil and paper debugging of your childhood. That's fascinating. So let's talk a little bit about, because you've been both a part of startups as well as monster companies, literally with Apple, the one of the biggest companies, if not the biggest company in the whole wide world. Um, what were some of the things there that you really learned from those experiences? Because say what you want about working in the corporate world. I mean, these are well-oiled machines with just a ridiculous amount of success in their history. I mean, Apple didn't get to where it is because it sucked. I mean, it's the best in the world. It's world class. So, what were some of the learnings you got from there that you think are important to now bring with you into the Web3 world that we should all know about?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So at Apple, it really taught me two major things. One, things don't have to be, not everything has to be perfect. Not every process has to be perfect for you to do incredible things. This is kind of airing the Apple's dirty laundry a little bit, but it's in a loving way. I was in working on a team that developed internal apps for the other teams at Apple, and so I really got to like sit in each team and kind of see what their processes are, see what their pain points are, and then alleviate those. And Apple has come a long way and accomplished so much. And there were processes that were really archaic and in need of updating, which was a fun challenge for me. But it taught me that take what you have and run with it, and those processes will improve over time. They'll become pain points, and then you improve on them, and then you keep moving forward. I've seen so many projects, including my own, sit on the drawing room floor forever while perfection is the goal. But when you talk about perfection, perfection is what you should be shooting for with your end product. Under the hood, it can have room for improvement. That's fine. Actually, in the software engineering world, you never really want to be finished developing something, especially these days. You're really providing a service, and the moment that you're finished and it's perfect and no one wants anything done, that's because no one's using it. People are using your product; they're going to want it to constantly evolve, and that's Apple, constantly changing, and there's always room for improvement, and that's a good thing. The other thing I learned is just how important team uh, the bonds between team members is. The way Apple's structured, even though it's a very large company, it has maintained a very like horizontal structure where there's lots of like smaller teams, and so you really feel like you're like at a little startup that collaborates with the other startups at Apple to do awesome stuff. And I really respect that, especially after working at some more traditional corporations and missing that kind of that weird startup culture at Apple that I really respect that they never lost that fully. And that adds a lot because that's where you get those personal touches. And when you're interfacing with something someone's created, you can tell if they were passionate and if they cared. And you can always feel that when you interact with an Apple product. And that's what we want to do at Go Meta Rail and at every project that I've worked on.
That's amazing. So you move then from working with these powerhouses of software and corporation, and then you somehow get into crypto. What was that? What was that like? How did you first hear about it? And then what was your path of going down the rabbit hole?
Um, so I think like a lot of people, Bitcoin was the first thing I heard about. And like a lot of people, I thought it was stupid. And at a point that if I would have realized, we'd all be millionaires now. If we would have realized what Bitcoin was going to be, I thought it was a cool experiment. But it's like, that's cute. Someone made software coins or whatever, and then suddenly I'm blindsided by this entire industry. And then when I look back on it, Bitcoin being kind of like the great grandfather of crypto, I have such a deep respect for Bitcoin and how well it was designed and how that I just didn't appreciate at first. So I feel like I'm kind of late to the party with crypto because it's moved so fast. So the past couple years, um, I started to realize the power of Ethereum smart contracts and other derivatives of that, and obviously the value of it as an investment. But really, the technology, just kind of realizing how eloquent these solutions are. A smart contract compared to a traditional piece of software is just beautiful. Like it's so close to being perfect. And it's when you start getting into crypto, there's a lot of complexity, but the complexity is just not really being familiar with it. The actual the actual things you work with every day, the smart contracts, they're not complicated in themselves. They're actually really simple. And if that's going to be our future, if it's going to be built on these pillars that are very well thought out and simple, then that's an exciting space that is the inevitable evolution of my career. Like, well, that's where I want to be. I want to be on the cutting edge.
That's amazing. So it was really the power of smart contracts. That's what really caught your eye.
Right. Yeah, because you could really make a market out of anything. So huge gains in the news that people were making on certain things, that was interesting. It obviously gets your attention. But it wasn't until I looked under the hood and saw, well, actually the substance here is really something that's what, okay, well, this is what I want to do.
That's amazing. And so once you see smart contracts and you've gone under the hood, you see the elegance of them, how do you then go from, okay, smart contracts are really cool, to go meta rail? What's that journey look like?
So when when I started to get involved in the metaverse just as a spectator, I wanted to learn more about it, see what it was, see what the state of it was. It's so it was so interesting. Each project I'd find, I just thought, "Oh, this is really neat. Well, that's really neat. Well, I really want to play that. Well, I really want to be there." And then one day, I mean, it pretty much I pretty much woke up in a cold sweat about this idea because it's like, well, that's not that's not what I want. Like, I want all of these to be together. I want to like go do a thing, go racing with my friends, and then like go to the movies in a different metaverse with my friends, and then go play this game. And then like if it's gonna really be the future of the human interaction, then we can't keep like jumping out, going back to web 2, going back to Google, finding another entry point. Like it's this like unknowable mystery. Like that's not the future. The future is going to be cohesive. It's going to be connected. You think about in the 90s, if you were told, oh, there's no such thing as hyperlinks, you have to pick one web page, you have to stay on that web page for the rest of your life. Well, what if you chose the wrong one? What if you chose like AOL communities, and you put all that investment into it, and now, oh well, Amazon, I should have picked Amazon, or I should have picked. You can't. Like, the internet is the whole thing, and that's the value of it. And so while each one of these metaverses is amazing, they're so much better together. And so it's really just that dream of what it should be. And then when I started looking into it from an engineering perspective, realizing that like, hey, we can actually do this. This actually isn't impossible, and we can do this at scale. Well, then that's, you know, well, game over then. So then we went running with that concept.
I love that. I love that. And that's what really inspired me. Like I want to be very transparent with everybody listening, that I am an advisor in Go Meta Rail, and very happy to be, a part of the whole project. Really, what inspired me about that was the idea of finally true connection, between all of the worlds and the games and everything within the metaverse, and that unification in and of itself builds a network that is, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful applications of Metcalfe's law that I've ever seen over my entire career. Because we know that the value of a network is the number of connected nodes squared. Well, this has the potential to be the most powerful network within the entire metaverse, because in essence, it is the entire metaverse. It's linking together everything within the metaverse. And so you don't have to make a choice of, okay, I want to bet on this one, I want to bet on that one, I want to bet on that one, because you're just building it all together, and you're taking everything that is so separate, and there's a silo over here, and very siloed, and you're bringing everything together, and you're concentrating it in a beautiful way. And that, to me, was one of the most inspiring visions and solutions to get to that vision that I've ever come across. I mean, it's truly amazing and inspiring.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's another Apple thing, but when you think about the skeuomorphism of the metaverse, which, if you're not familiar with the term, skeuomorphism is like making a digital thing look like a real thing. Like, if you remember the first iPhone, the Notes app actually looked like a sheet of paper, and the calculator actually looked like a physical calculator. And like, although that looks cheesy now when you look back on it, I mean, there's some nostalgia there, but it's dated. The world needed that. Like, it needed it to look real enough for you to be able to make that leap into smartphones. It was very smart. a very smart design language that Apple chose. In the same way, the metaverse has chosen some pieces of skeuomorphism. You have land ownership, you have like currency, you have owning items, things that are similar to the real world. We need those to jump in. But what it doesn't have is travel. You think about what the world would look like if there were no airports, if there were no trains, there were no buses, and each community was just a complete. I mean, we can look in the history books and see what that actually was like. Each community was completely isolated, and then we're basically connecting them with an airport, and it's like, well, now there's tourism, and now you're sharing cultures, and things are all kind of mixing around and getting really interesting. So the skeuomorphism of like of travel and how easy that is to imagine taking a train, going to a new place, being a metaverse tourist, that makes it so much less intimidating to think about exploring the metaverse, especially for new users.
Do you think there's going to be a future where the I'm thinking about the analog version of tourism and how it's going to get digitized, and the idea of travel agents who are like booking, vacations for you and planning out this full route and all the things to see. Do you think they're going to be metaverse tourism or travel agents, that help guide you through the different worlds? Like you could go to them and say, "Hey, these are the kinds of things that I enjoy. These are my interests. What worlds should I go check out to scratch that itch?" Do you see anything like that?
I think that's the interesting thing about this space is almost anything that you can imagine happening in the real world can and probably should be happening in the metaverse. So you first started saying that, and I'm like, well, that I don't know if that would work. But the more you mention it, that's the point of a travel agent. Like you don't have to do all that research yourself, spend all this money, go on this trip, realize it wasn't what you wanted, come home. You don't have to learn the hard way. You can get someone to like manage it for you. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. That's are you writing that down?
Well, luckily we're streaming it, so we have this
Yeah.
permanently documented on the internet. So, thinking about then the implications of a fully connected metaverse. And by the way, maybe we should clear up the idea of what the metaverse is, because there's a lot of debate which a little bit seems silly and kind of like a waste of time, but let's just, go on the record and clear it up. My theory is everything that's not physical and analog, everything that is digital, that's the metaverse. Like we're already there. We're right now we're talking in the metaverse. It's a very unsophisticated version of entry to the metaverse. Like we have screens, computers, phones, watches, blah blah blah. And so eventually, we're going to get the full headset and the chip in our brain, and that's going to be the sophisticated entry into it, and then the full realization of that. But the metaverse is here. We're already in it. We're already living it. It's the internet, scaled out. That's what I believe is the metaverse. And everybody that's claiming they're building their own metaverse, they're just building a different world within the greater thing. But what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think it is definitely open for debate. I don't think we're too far right now what we're doing on this interview from what a metaverse is. I think what has really created the metaverse concept is that two big barriers in digital life have been overcome in the very recent past. So you think about something that you need to be able to have a human experience in a certain place. You have to have a currency to deal with, to have some kind of economy, and you have to have the ability to own things. Like those are such basic things we don't even think about it. But in the digital space, you traditionally don't really have those things. You don't really have money. You don't really have items. Money is in the real world, and you have to like put your credit card number in. It's very like separate. And then ownership has always been more like rental. If you buy a movie online, you're really just renting it, and if at any moment they could take that away from you, it's not the same as like owning like a Blu-ray disc, although it does have benefits. So now that cryptocurrency has given us a way to really own digital currency, and it's a superior currency, but either way, it at least compares to where you own it and there's no physical counterpart. And then NFTs have given us the ability to physically own non-physical things, which is incredible. Like at that point, suddenly those two barriers have come down. So really any space that combines those things of having a digital currency and a digital way of physically owning non-physical things, you're in a metaverse at that point.
Oh, that's so interesting. Now, why does it have to be like, why do those 2 things have to be satisfied before it becomes a true metaverse?
Um, that's a good question. So I feel like I feel like the metaverse is all about a an alternate experience, not just an experience where you're playing a game or you're watching a movie and you're pretending, you have like some escapism, but actually like you have the human world where you decide the human world, the real world where you decide to like go outside and do stuff with your friends. The metaverse is the go outside and do stuff with your friends but virtual. And it can seem like, well, that's basically a game, but the difference there is in the metaverse you're actually doing things that you would do in the real world in terms of ownership and in terms of economy and in terms of those are the things that change it from like just being a game or just being a simulation. You are this character because this character has money. It may even be making income in this metaverse. Its pocket is full of stuff that you own, no one can take from you. Without those things, I feel like you're always just kind of pretending. It's always just kind of you're watching a movie or you're playing a game. With when it comes to ownership, suddenly the lines are really blurred between like the virtual world and the real world. It's not that you know which one you're in, but there's so few differences once you have that ownership and you're able to uh, do that ownership in a comprehensive way that blockchain satisfies.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, I guess just to kind of make sure it makes sense in my brain, the distinction is once it's comparable in functionality to analog, digital becomes at that level of, okay, this is a metaverse. We have property and the ability to transact with current like exchange. Then we have enough basic functionality that, okay, now we can do the things we need to do to actually build from there. Like those are basic building blocks.
Right. Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So then I'm curious because clearly I'm biased towards games. Started the Crypto Gaming Institute. I love games. I've been a gamer since I was 6 years old. Why do you think the metaverse is so freaking appealing to gamers? Like why did we as a class of people or a grouping of people, why did we get so fascinated by this idea and encapsulated by, maybe that's not even a word, but definitely word. Maybe it's not the right application of it, but why do we get so entranced rather by this idea of the metaverse?
I think there's multiple things. So, one, the experience itself. I think anyone who's loved games or books or movies or just escapism in general, there's something about like being somewhere else. And it doesn't have to be virtual reality, although that's awesome, but it can still be on a screen. But there's something about really being able to just be somewhere else and feel like you can just transport yourself somewhere else. And in the video game world, again, there's always this level of pretending. And there's something about the metaverse that just makes it's just like that it's like you've gone through that valley of like you're pretending and you're coming out the other side and it's like, no, this is actually like getting really real. Like I own things. It just starts to feel more tangible. And then the other part of it is interesting where in a way the gaming industry in a lot of ways has begun to stagnate. There's still great games out there, but there's also a whole industry of just games, AAA titles just getting milled out and sequels that just, they're it's not like it's not the same games that we grew up with, right? Like they're not consistently have so much care and thought put into them and new boundaries being broken. We've hit a little bit of a rut in gaming. So
Like almost
occasionally,
like how many Call of Duty derivatives do we really need?
yeah, exactly. And so we've kind of hit this point where a few large companies control the video gaming space, and inevitably it starts to become a little bit plain and corporate and boring. And in the metaverse space, since it's crypto related and since you're breaking these boundaries, you actually have these small projects with these really abstract, interesting new ideas that do actually have the ability to go out and produce them. Whereas before, if you didn't have the budget of a AAA game company, there's just no point. You have indie games, and then you have AAA, nothing else. The metaverse is everything, all the way up to AAA, everything in between, because you have that capital and you have there's money going into that industry, and it's creating this cottage industry of these just fantastic experiences being developed without giving too much thought to like the market. It's kind of interesting. It's just like passionate people making the stuff they want. And that's where the best games come from and the best movies come from. When the director, when the producer, they're just passionate and they want to make this thing, that always ends up being the best. And we're going to get a thousandfold of that when the metaverse really starts taking off.
And I cannot wait for that because it's going to be so much fun. I mean, when I was growing up as a teenager, I must have put in thousands of hours into World of Warcraft, and the idea of being able to take an experience like that and have it be completely immersive in the metaverse to where I can actually fly on the dragon. I can actually battle the lava monster. I can shoot a freaking fireball from my hands and vaporize some pesky imp or whatever. That is going to be so fun. It's going to be literally so much fun. I'm not sure people are ever going to want to log out. They're going to get so like I think it's going to be really really so immersive that we're going to want to spend all of our time there. And so I guess the idea then is, okay, well, how do you figure out where best to spend your time, and how do you make sure you experience all of it? And I think that is one of the things that you're really solving for, is giving people access to different worlds so that you can save the time of trying to find them. I mean, you can basically give the ability to jump from world to world as quickly as humanly, or actually as quickly as digitally possible, to maximize your ability to explore.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's the content in the metaverse is so interesting that you will have lots of things to do. But if you're like me, starting a game is kind of the best part, or at least it's a hobby unto itself, like starting new things. And so when you're talking about a space where there's so much innovation and so much being created, like while we're having this interview, there's probably 50 new metaverses that just started, at least, and there's just so much to see. And so yeah, you'll find your favorites and you'll go back to them. Your favorites will change over time, but just the pure exploration of it will be really satisfying, especially with the boundaries taken down. Like you think about in traditional gaming, you'd have certain games are available for one console, certain are available for another console. Maybe your budget can only afford a certain amount of games, or maybe you have to rent a game and then give it back, and you hadn't finished it yet. The metaverse is just going to have less boundaries. So especially with our travel network, you're going to be able to just access so many games that you really could visit a different one every hour of every day, and that alone could be its own game in a way, just kind of exploring. Which those are my favorite kind of games. So
Me too. I mean, one minute you could be on a pirate ship fighting Blackbeard, but it's like cyborg Blackbeard who also has magical powers and like a plasma gun and then like a magic sword, and then you go off and the opportunities are literally limitless. Now, I'm interested to know, are you like, do you have games that when you were playing, you were like, yeah, this is it. This is what the whole video game thing was about. I mean, I know you've had a ridiculously productive career thus far, so maybe you didn't have as much time to play games. But I guess what I'm getting at is like, what sort of games are you looking forward to? What sort of experiences or like get you jacked up? I mean, the thought of World of Warcraft, but fully in the metaverse. I mean, literally that's a strong percentage of the driving factor behind why I do things is to make that reality happen. What's that for you?
Um, yeah, I always liked the DOS games where you'd have, I mean, PC gaming is such a relatively new thing. Like DOS games were like the forgotten about corner of gaming for so long that you'd come across a game and it would just feel so like secret. Like you're playing, it might even be like just like a text-based adventure or one with like really limited 3D effects. And there was something about feeling like you just found this secret game that maybe 10 other people, including the developers, have ever played. And then playing it just felt really neat. Like this is like the deep cuts, video gaming deep cuts. I always enjoyed that. More recently, I think Breath of the Wild is Zelda is one of about as close to a perfect game as you can get, in terms of having the open world, no loading screens, a really deep story that's not intimidating, and like plenty of quest things to do, but then also just goofing off, which is fun. That game's pretty perfect, but it's heavy on exploration, so I'm biased. But I've always enjoyed that. I've always enjoyed feeling like I've found this secret place in a game, or feeling like the game itself is has been discovered, and yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking for in the metaverse. I've basically, my life now is discovering all of these amazing new projects starting every minute of every day and being able to actually uh research them and meet the amazing people behind them. And yeah, discovering games, that's the best part for me.
That's amazing. So which games do you think, and maybe we don't have to single out any one or the other. Maybe we could just keep it more to like the folks that you're talking to. I know you're talking to a bunch. Like which ones do you think are really the most exciting to you? Are they the ones that they are going after that AAA feel? They're trying to build the World of Warcrafts, or are they doing something much simpler now? It's kind of like a version 0.001, like the games that are really catching your eye and catching your attention and getting you excited. What are they doing differently than everyone else?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of, I want to say all, but I always feel like I'm missing something when I say a blanket statement about the metaverse. But a lot of metaverses that are popular today, or are yeah, are always in the news today, popular, have had to stay within the limitations of what could be made in a relatively quickly time frame to let people experience this metaverse, which is a good thing. You have experiences where they intentionally went for a low poly count style, and that saved a lot of development time. It also gives it an interesting aesthetic, and those are always going to be out first, and that's great. Um, it's to me, it's the projects that are going for like the ultra realism that just blow my mind, because like it's like a simulation, for example. The simulation metaverses, I mean, there's just so much that you have to simulate before it's even like at before it's even at the baseline where people will accept it as what you're promising. And so the task is so monumental, and seeing them like make progress on these things. I have one I saw the other day where they sent a render of what one of the buildings in the game's going to look like, and it's like you can like count the count the bumps on like each brick on the side of this like beautiful building, and that's just like one building on one block in this one city in this one, and they're building like a whole, like the whole thing. So the scale at which some of these games are being attempted is just incredible. And then one other side that I really like is racing metaverses. That didn't even occur to me that that would be a thing. And then as soon as I discovered it, I'm like, this should definitely have been a thing. I'm glad, because I love racing games. It's a simulation, but there's something really cool about like either being a vehicle or like being in a metaverse where you're like having to manage your garage and manage your shop and all those kind of like really fun car games. Taking that to the metaverse is just such a fun take on how the blockchain can be used to kill time. Those are two completely opposite examples, but I'm excited about hyper realistic simulations and the fact that racing games and niches like that are really having a boom in the metaverse. It's nice.
So wait, when you say you are the car, like you're actually the car driving, is that like more of like the Pixar Cars version or
Oh, with
like
the eyeballs on the front?
yeah.
Well, I hope so. If someone isn't making that, I hope that one gets made. But no, the ones I've seen have been more like, what's the game called? Burnout? Is that the right thing? You know, like, is it Burnout where you're, like, in the car all the time? It's like open world, but kinda like
I
that. So it's like open world, but you're always in the car and you never see the characters, so in a sense, you kind of are the car. Um, yeah, I think that's neat.
That is very awesome. I'm actually picturing like the Star Wars racing, in the movie where it's little Anakin and he's doing
Oh,
the
yeah, pod
and
racing?
yeah, I'm picturing things like that, like with very futuristic, cool ships and different, like the space version of Formula One almost.
Yeah, or, what is it, F-Zero? The F-Zero series? Someone who just takes, like, a total, um, you know, I don't know if it's low poly, what's the word? Like retro, like a Tron-inspired, racing game? That'd be cool.
Can't wait. Can't wait for those. So we're at this point right now in the metaverse where there was a lot of excitement end of 2021, kind of middle to end of 2021. Now we're in 2022 and as of the streaming of this, what are we in? Middle of April. It kind of feels like there's been a little bit of a lull of attention from the marketplace and from the world right now. Not so much from people have lost their enthusiasm for what the metaverse is going to be, not even what it can be, but what it's going to be. For example, recently we had the announcement JP Morgan said that the metaverse is a 1 trillion with a T dollar a year revenue opportunity. That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. But it feels like there was a lot of speculation, a lot of people, a lot of retail investors throwing money in, big swings in price. And now it feels like almost a little bit of just kind of dying down a little bit. Do you think that there's a point, and I'm not asking about market stuff because, over the long term it's up and to the right, but more from like the technology, from the metaverse, from people building. Do you think now is the time where the most important innovations are going to come, the most important projects are going to be built, and the people who are going to be the most important figures of the metaverse are really going to distinguish themselves? Or like, what do you think is happening with the metaverse right now? Like, is everybody just heads down building? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, that it's interesting. In one way, you're right that the people building now is really going to make a huge difference on where the metaverse ends up. It's kind of like with Bitcoin and Ethereum. It's like I know very different projects, but they kind of like when no one was paying attention, just came out with this amazing world altering technology. So there are amazing things that come out of passionate people focusing on a task. Um, but one thing that has kind of affected this space, I think, is that we have you have a traditional, I want to say Web 2, but it's not really Web 2. It's really like a traditional internet business uh, reality, where whenever the big players would enter a space, that would be when that space is suddenly legitimized, and suddenly you're like, okay, this is a real thing. Now we can start investing funds into this space. That used to be true. That's not true anymore. So when Facebook decided to change to Meta and do the whole Horizon Worlds thing, um, when they did that, I think the market, the old world market, uh, uh, overreacted to it. Basically, they thought, well, oh, all these kids are out there making video games, but now Facebook's going to show us how it's done, right? And I don't think they realized that the metaverse is actually made of the little guy. And people like Facebook, that maybe Horizons will eventually be great. Who knows? I wish them all the best. But the corporations, the large companies that are coming from this established older space, they're the ones that are actually going to struggle because they come in. There's no tried and tested formula that people are going to fall for. There's no like, oh, I know what people want. They want this, this, and that, and then we can take their money or whatever. There's no like, the business model doesn't work like that. The metaverse is all about that passion and those creators and, well, who's actually making it? What is the CEO like? What are their hobbies? Can we go on their Discord server and just hang out? Like, people want that. We're in this new world. Metaverse gaming software, the internet experience has taken that same shift that crypto and NFTs took. That like, no, this is for the people. The people own this. If those people become companies, okay, fair enough. We'll let that go where it goes. But companies can't just move in and shape it. It's we're shaping it. You have to let the community be part of it, and that's a really, really difficult change, almost impossible change for these large companies, and they're feeling the hurt from that. So when Facebook kind of over ambitiously thought we can just move into this space and do it, I think they're realizing that that's not the way it works, and the older marketplace, traditional internet marketplace, is also overreacting to how that hasn't been working. So it's kind of this swing, and it's kind of this like noise that doesn't really affect the actual metaverse. So it's a shame that the metaverse, the word metaverse, has been dragged into all that. But really, what it is, it's a growing pain. It's a backlash of hopefully a realization that the old tools don't work anymore. People aren't as easily fooled anymore. Like, you got to make a real thing. You got to make it with passion. You've got to make it with a real team that wants to do amazing things. If you come into it any less genuine than that, people will actually turn on you. And that's what's keeping the metaverse such an interesting space. That we want real creators. We don't want just a company to roll in and try to do another Call of Duty 6 or whatever in the metaverse. That's not going to work.
Well, that's actually very inspiring, because that means that we get to preserve the integrity of what this idea can become and is becoming. And that means that where we as individuals, as people, have the ability to shape this new digital world that we are all creating together. And that is very empowering. It means we have the ability to influence the future in a meaningful way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even just look at GoMetaRel. Like, who's connecting the metaverse? Is it Google? Is it Facebook? Is it Apple? Is it one of these large? No, it's this cottage industry, like this company with a passion and a vision and a passionate community. And that's why we know it's going to be done right. And when changes need to be made, the community is going to speak, and we're going to make those changes. And it's for the people. And that's why gaming and the internet experience itself is only going to benefit from the shift to the metaverse.
I love that. I love that. And I think what's really cool about that too, another thing that's really cool about this idea of what we're talking about, is the fact that already we've seen such integrity and resilience of the community of people who care about the metaverse and really want to build it, despite all of the mega corporations turning their eyeballs to really laser focus on the metaverse. It is the opportunity of a lifetime. It is where the future's going. And yet right now we're seeing, there was such a backlash against Facebook. It feels like they kind of got their asses kicked. And but by the community of people who, they may not even be talking to each other directly, but like together, we're all working together to preserve this beautiful thing and this vision of this open metaverse. That to me is also very inspiring. Not only do we have the power to influence it, but what we've seen thus far is we're doing a good job, and it's really cool, and it's very open, and it's a really, really positive atmosphere and feeling between all of the different people that are building it out. And that to me is very, very exciting and very inspiring for what it will become, because the the end result of a creation is very heavily influenced by the main people who are responsible for that creation. And so we're seeing now the community being a solid community of human beings. Like there's a lot of really high integrity, very smart, very hardworking people building out the metaverse. And that's really good news for the metaverse.
Yeah, it's like the one bad egg saying, right? But when you do it at scale, it does actually kind of iron out those bad eggs. Like it's been like that with the crypto and metaverse, crypto and NFT space more recently, with the rug pulls and with the scams and then unintentional rug pulls where projects just kind of like gave up and didn't give back to the community. All those kind of things, like yeah, they happened, but they happen less and less frequently because people, it's not one group gets fooled and then another group gets fooled. No, the whole community gets fooled. And then it's like, okay, we're going to get smarter now. We're going to make better decisions. We're going to make sure we do our homework. And so each time that happens, you hate that it happens. It puts these things in a bad light, but it's almost like an immune system response. It's like each time the community gets stronger and better at calling out what's happening before it reaches that point. And that's only going to make the projects better. The NFT space, especially, really needs to have those things get sifted out, and they will get sifted out because they're going to fail and they're going to realize, oh, you can't scam people like that anymore, and it's going to end up better for it. So, yeah,
Of
a
course.
community at scale really can be powerful.
Of course. It's not a straight line. It's a roller coaster. You have your ups and downs. In the ups, hopefully you learn and you progress. In the downs, hopefully you learn even more and you can trim the fat and get better and position yourself for the next up. I
Yeah,
think what's exciting is everybody knows we're headed for it. We don't exactly know what it is fully. It's hard to grasp because there's not like one thing. It's just going to be this amorphous, really interesting, cool digital experience, virtual experience, just the metaverse. But we all know it's going to be awesome. We all know it's coming. And I think with people like yourself leading the charge of building in this space, that puts a smile on my face. It really does. I know we're getting close to time here. Um, I wanted to ask really quickly about. I want to get kind of dive into the tech for a second. Linking worlds. We're talking about interoperability to an extent. Everything's built differently. Maybe there are some pieces of technology, pieces of software that are kind of like the foundational pieces, maybe the languages. I'm not super technical, so please, teach me here. How are you actually able to connect everything on a technical level?
yeah, and I do want to make sure. I don't know how much time we have left, but I did want to talk about our NFT project before we do get off. Um, but let me talk about this first. So, really, the key to connecting the metaverse is that it's kind of like that lesson I was saying at the very beginning that I learned at Apple, that you can't sit there designing a blueprint of perfection forever while technology passes you by. If that would have happened, Apple would have designed the perfect car phone like in 2015, and no one would care. So you, when it comes to connecting the metaverse, there's an idealist way of saying, well, let's have a standard protocol that we're all going to use as metaverses so that there's interoperability and you're going to be able to connect between them simply. That would be great. There'd be so many benefits to that. There would also be downsides to that because that cuts into your innovation. That at that point, everyone has to stop. Everyone has to redo what they've done so far. Everyone has to try and fail to like make all these different things work together. That breaks innovation. I don't think the metaverse is going to be as interesting if everyone stops and worries about that stuff right now. The metaverse needs to just grow and just create your amazing thing and just go full speed. And we're going to connect you however you work. It doesn't matter which blockchain you're on. It doesn't matter which cryptocurrency you use. It doesn't matter what your smart contract, how it's written. And the secret to that, or I guess it's not a secret now that I'm saying it on on a podcast, but the real secret to Go Meta Rail is that, coming from an engineering background, I know that the key is writing custom drivers for things. You have a metaverse wants to join the network. They are what they are. You don't want them to stop and change it. So you write whatever code needs to be written to connect that one metaverse to your network. All of those connections together becomes this network that grows exponentially, because once you add like your 11th one, and it's going to automatically connect to the other 10. So it's really just what's the minimum amount that needs to be written to bring this specific unique metaverse into our network. And in that case, there are no limitations, because if anyone who's into engineering will tell you, you can do anything. Given enough time, given enough resources, you can do anything. And in this case, each connection is actually not that technically complex. It's just taking the time, attention, and care to make sure that you're connecting them in a way where it's tasteful. You're not detracting from their art style. It's a smooth experience for the user. So it's the custom experience. We're going to be custom fitting suits for the whole metaverse, and it's going to look really sharp when we're done. Later, that might lead to certain standards being developed, but that's later. We can't wait for those standards. We need to just connect it as it is.
I love that. I love that. And you're basically laying the rails for interoperability in a really interesting way by going one world at a time. And that is exciting because it seems like that's really the only way you can do it to have a really good solution.
Yeah, you have to, because otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to end up with a bunch of different pockets of networks that are compatible with each other, or they're compatible with themselves but not each other. That actually makes the metaverse more fragmented. So then you end up like metaverse A versus metaverse B. This one has 5 games. That one has 10 games. It makes it harder. You're almost back to like having limitations, and only being able to access certain things. So yeah, the only way to connect everything is to connect everything the way it is, and that's what we're doing.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, Chris, talk to us a little bit about the NFTs because I think that's an interesting opportunity for folks who want to get in early on Go Meta Rail. Tell us a little bit about it, then we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
Yeah, so what's awesome about our club? So we have the Go Meta Rail Club. We're minting soon. If you check our Twitter, you can see all the details for that. But the way that it works is, while we're connecting all of these metaverses, we're making all of these partnerships with the entire metaverse. As we're doing that, we're basically negotiating exclusive deals for our Meta Rail Club members. So if you wanted to explore the metaverse, you wanted to like not miss out on some awesome whitelist or alpha testing, beta testing spot, maybe some in-game items that are exclusive. You can get those. You can go to one specific metaverse. You can stay there. You can wait for the moment. You can enter the giveaway, and maybe you'll get some of those things in that one metaverse. What we're doing is we're doing that at scale. You join our club, you can just sit there. We'll do all the hard work for you. We'll introduce you to these metaverses. You'll get cool exclusive items. And then when you join those metaverses later, you're already going to have all the cool stuff. People are going to, oh, where'd you get that from? Oh, Go Metaro Club they only made 5 of them, and you're going to have all these exclusive kind of VIP access to the metaverse, and that really lowers the barrier of entry, and also makes it, again, it's like you're a VIP to the whole thing. It has this beautiful synergy of like, we're connecting the metaverse anyway. This is such a beautiful opportunity to take some special exclusive items and moments and opportunities from each one, pass that on to our club level members. So that's our goal here, is to have passionate fans of the metaverse, or tourists that are just along for the ride and want to see, well, what's all this metaverse stuff about. Join our club, and you're going to be on the front row seat. So that's exactly where you want to be as the metaverse grows into the future of our experience.
Love it. Chris, give us one last piece of alpha. It doesn't have to be anything related to crypto or the metaverse or the blockchain. It totally can be if you want, but just one piece of life alpha of let's make everybody's lives just a little bit better.
Well, now I'm on the spot. I don't know. Let's see. I think yeah, I think that I guess it is going to be about the metaverse, because that's what I'm eating, sleeping, and drinking right now. But I just think that it's awesome that there's a space for creators to really do something that makes an impact on the future. And I just kind of want to inspire anybody who's thinking about getting into this space and thinking, I have an idea for a metaverse. I have an idea for Like, just try it. Like, you're going to enjoy creation. You're going to enjoy making something new. You're going to enjoy learning new technologies. You might fail your first couple times, and then your third one will be a hit. So, the whole thing is just a journey. And I think you'll have a lot of fun, and your users will have fun experiencing that too. So this is an inclusive an inclusive space. So I say jump in.
Amazing. Chris, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I know you're a very busy man linking the whole metaverse together. And so I appreciate you coming on the show and really sharing your experiences and your story, and really telling the story of Go Meta Rail and sharing your thoughts on the metaverse. And it'll be interesting to see, because I want to have you back on as the journey progresses. So it'll be interesting to see where you are now and where Go Meta Rail is now versus 6, 12, 18, 24 months from now. So I know everybody's going to be excited to tune into the next addition to this series. But anyways, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Everybody who's watching and listening, thank you very much for tuning in today, and I will see you all on the next episode.